Hey, good morning, everybody. And yes, special time, not usually morning, usually noon, but it is 10 a.m. on the East Coast here on Tuesday. And I appreciate you with the juggling of schedules. I got a little bit going on this week, so you got to fit pieces in where you can, right? And that's kind of the name of the game for all of our lives in general, and definitely mine too. So let's get started on episode 12. Made it to a dozen. That's awesome. So what we're going to talk about today is kind of follow our normal itinerary, if you will. But healthy habits going to be active. I'm purposely using that word like I do in the book Simple Plan versus exercise, although exercise is one version of being active. The noise, Black Friday. Share some of my experiences over the past weekend, and obviously it's a shared experience for all of us and conditioned headaches. A lot of headaches coming in the office this past week. And so I wanted to touch on kind of what are the primary causes and sources of headaches. Some you might be surprised by, and in a good way, a good number of them you have a lot of influence over attempting to try to avoid them, right? And that's the biggest goal is let's not have it in the first place. And obviously, for everybody here live, you know why, because I sent out a post. But yep, tomorrow I will be taking off at 6 in the morning. The plane leaves the runway. Yes, early, early. On my way back down to Mexico to Acapulco. I haven't been there in a year. And if you know anything about my story, then you know a lot of my story over the last few years is kind of been influenced. We'll call it that. Influenced in Acapulco of all places. And no, I wouldn't have guessed that in advance either. So why don't we get to it? Be active, right? So there's our healthy habit of this week to talk about. Hopefully, it's our healthy habit of every week to do. But there's lots of versions of being active, and that's why I really like the word active as opposed to uh, pigeonholing it down into exercise only and what we all connotate or think about. What does exercise mean? Does it mean we have to be dressed a certain way and have our water bottle and anything from P90X to Richard Simmons to Jane Fonda, take your pick. Does that have to be at a gym, versus just putting on your shoes and going for a walk in your neighborhood, going to a park somewhere? All of it counts. And honestly, we all need a variety of our activities. And that's kind of what I'm going to harp on today because it hit me physically, not in a bad way, very noticeably. Hit me physically as I started to switch up what I'm doing now for winter because rowing season, which is mostly May, but definitely ends end of October, beginning of November, so a few weeks ago. So I've been having to try to reconfigure what I do because I leaned on rowing so much because it was at least 3 days out of my week and they're a couple hours, each of a practice. So on the off days, I'd do stuff, but I'm certainly not going to be, lifting hard or anything like that because I needed to save that muscle strength and the primary endurance for the rowing. So everything switches up, and that was my lesson that I was like, you need a little more variety next season to go with just rowing um, to just kind of keep the balance of how my body is working. Now, granted, not to give an excuse, but I want to share it with you because you may be in a similar circumstance or have been or will be, hopefully not, but will be. I was also in a car accident at the beginning of the summer. So, June 4th, on my way home from rowing practice. So pumped for the beginning of the season. Yay. And sitting at a red light and smash. I get crushed from behind by a Chevy Tahoe. And if you don't know what that is, it's a large truck. The good news is I drive a F Ford 150. Yeah, I can't even say it. Yeah, Ford F-150. So my truck's just as big, but it still is a lot of physics of collision. And I was just sitting still at a light. Young lady came, who knows, but she wasn't slowing down and hit me pretty solid from behind. I was like, ah, geez. And my initial gut response was, I just kind of wanted to get home. I got things to do. Now I got to stop and exchange insurance and all that kind of stuff and move on my way. Well, unfortunately, By the time we even stopped, the pain had already set in my upper back, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Because see, I'm used to thinking that I'm invincible because I don't suffer from a lot of physical ailments in general, and a lot of it is due to what I'm teaching you here, and hopefully you're doing. And when you do it, you know what I'm talking about. All right. We do have a lot of influence, but as this young lady taught me, we are not in control and we're definitely not invincible. So stuff happens, right? Does it stink? Obviously. But stuff happens. And so we have to deal with it, right? We all have to at certain times. So pick your thing. So that really scaled down what my motivation was for working out this summer, and I kind of had to go a little easy the first month or two, and then it got a little better, and now I'm kind of basically about fine now. So we're talking almost 6 months later before I feel like I'm at 100%. I still have to test it out with a real full workout in the gym, a few of them, not just one to kind of really test things. But thankfully, it's feeling pretty good and good. But we need a variety of things. So whether it's an accident or whether it's a rowing season that's ending or whether winter is upon us and weather changes and all that sort of stuff, that's all real. It's not to be dismissed as fact, okay? But your body doesn't care. It's like, and so what? Get out. We still need you to move, right? That's what our body needs. Our body needs us to do the right things so that our body can function at its best. And so I was, I won't say I was talked into, I was invited to go to the gym with my wife, who likes to work out of the gym very regularly. She's very fit, very active, excellent role model for me at home. And one of her favorite classes is body pump class. Now, we'd gone to a yoga class before. I'm cool with yoga. I like yoga, the active kind, the flow or vinyasa yoga. Um, and that was fine. And so I'd never been to a body pump class because I'd never been to a class of that nature probably since grad school when I worked at a gym and we had some fun classes that way. So I show up for class. Obviously, yes, it's like 95% women out of a room of 40, 50 people. There's three guys, me being one of them. Cool, that doesn't faze me. It's just like, I just want to paint a picture. And that's one thing too. Who cares what the crowd is? So guys, just go, right? And then it's like, all right, so we're going to gather these weights and these wets. And I knew, probably some light dumbbells you're moving around, which I heard about and everything. But now we're getting barbells and stacking weights on the sides. We're getting dumbbells too, and all this stuff. You get going. And I'm like, all right. And then it's basically an aerobics class with weights. So it was like, whoo. And let me tell you, for getting off the end of rowing season and feeling in really good shape and feeling pretty fit and some good cardio and all that sort of thing. Oh, that class kicked my booty. I was sore for almost a week till I went back the second time. We're going Saturday mornings now. And the one thing I knew after taking it, and I was so sore afterwards, was that I'm going to keep taking this class because when you're sore in a healthy way, and yes, I got adjusted too, but mostly it was muscle, but it was muscles being used in a way I had not used them. That simple, right? So, you look around the class, and no offense, if we went out into the gym and we did some other things, it's like I'd be here and all these ladies and some of them like older than me, and I don't mean that offensively. I mean from a fitness standpoint that, but full applause and respect for those folks in that class that were killing it. And so impressive, so cool. And if you're one of those people, I would just suggest, are you also doing some of those other things? And not in a contest way, but more in just a realistic way. We all get in our grooves, right? Because we like routines, our bodies like routine. But part of the dynamic with our bodies liking a routine is the longer we do the same thing. So for me, rowing, that was my fault. Sort of, no, it is my fault. Everything's my fault that I do. But just the same, those muscles killing it. That that motion killing it. Every other motion, I don't know, maybe, right? So you've got to mix it up. So if you've been in kind of a groove for the last few months, which is great because just showing up and doing anything on a given day is definitely better than doing nothing. So I'm not dismissing that, and I'd rather you do the same thing than not do something. But what I'd also invite you to do is to try to dabble and do something you haven't done, before. And it doesn't have to be whole scale. Like me, I gotta like have a whole different routine for the winter. But it's just like add a different thing. Say you're somebody that likes to go and walk or run on the treadmill all the time, right? And you're a runner. And okay, that's fine. Could you sit on a bike maybe once or twice a week? Or maybe you go to that class if you don't go to classes like me, right? Take a class, take a body pump class, take whatever. There's like a combat fitness class afterwards where probably, I'm assuming airboxing, and kickboxing and things like that. It really doesn't matter. It's called go and just use your body in a different way so that your body gets a variety. One term that's been used that I've heard many times and it just paints a picture is called muscle confusion, right? When our muscles get used to doing the same thing again and again and again, and say for like a sport, like we'll stick to rowing because obviously it's an easy one. So when I use my muscles in that same way over and over and over and over again, do they get stronger? Absolutely. Do they get better at doing that motion? Absolutely. Is that the point? Absolutely. Right. So for that specific function and that pattern of using my muscles, doing it repeatedly gets them better at it. Well, guess what happens though? They get better at it and then it takes more to get a workout. Okay, so that same workout, say at the beginning of a season, if I hadn't been working out over the winter from a rowing standpoint, and I'm not, I'll just let you know that I'm not going to very much. Rowing machines indoors is not fun. I do it out of need, but you help me on the water, I'll go every day. uh, so same motion, but when your body gets used to doing the same thing, and it doesn't matter what that thing is, it's just that it's the same thing. It could be the same class that you like to go to, and that's cool, again, that you like to go to that class. But your body's going to get better and better at it to where it's like knowing the answers to the test already, right? So your body just doesn't have to work as hard. And it's not a matter of just, well, we don't up weights like continuously until, in an infinite amount. Clearly, there's a ceiling and a healthy ceiling. That shouldn't be a push. Um, but just mix it up, right? So take a moment, think about, what is your routine? If you don't have one from this standpoint starting today, then you can do anything, right? But if you're in a pretty good groove and you like to do what you do, and again, that's a great thing. Just pick one, maybe like one day a week. You just insert something that maybe you've heard it said a few times in your ear, and so it's kind of stuck with you. The number of people at the office, usually the guys, that go and lift, and is it back and buys day and chest and tries day and leg day? Oops, skip leg day. No, don't skip leg day. It's but they're all the men as a group anyway tend to go more that way, and the ladies tend to go more classes in cardio percentage wise. We all need both, right? So whatever side of the spectrum you tend to gravitate towards, go wander over to the other side a little bit. If you are going to lift weights, I'd recommend working with a trainer, or at least have somebody show you a couple machines, maybe. It doesn't have to be a full training session, regimen, sign up for umpteen sessions kind of thing, unless you want it, and that's cool. But the difference with lifting weights versus a class, well, if you're at a class, there's a teacher, right? So depending on the class, they might see form. If you're new to the class, it might feel counterintuitive to you, but honest to goodness, go up in the front and be like right under the nose of the teacher so that they can see you. I know in a yoga class, again, which is most of my experience, those teachers will like wander around and walk through the class half the time, which is cool because they're looking to see what people's form is like and they help tweak it a little bit, which they should. This is really good. But things like, say, that body pump class. Well, the teacher's showing how to do it, and the teacher's doing the same exercises up on like a small stage or at least in the front of the room. and they can't walk around. And in a class like the size that I'm going to, they're not seeing you in the back, at least not with any great clarity. And that's not, it's not anything negative other than it's just the dynamic of the situation, right? So go out of your way to almost get like a free training session to where get there a couple minutes before it starts and get that spot up right in front of that teacher so that you can be under their nose. And even before the class, say, go up, introduce yourself. Say, hey, I'm excited about taking your class. I've heard good things, been meaning to, whatever you want to say, it doesn't matter. But volunteer that, hey, this is my first time in your class. And so I'm looking forward to doing it. And you can even leave it at that. And I can almost promise you that they're going to be looking at you a little bit more after the class. Might touch base, or you might touch base, or it might just be fine. And there isn't some discussion to be had. And it's just, hi, nice to meet you. And that's cool, whatever. I'm trying to give you these ideas to increase your comfort to make the step, right? Because all these nice ideas I write about in here, and all the nice ideas I think about too, and you think about, I'm sure. But until we cross that knowing doing gap, as they call it, and actually put it into action, then we're not going to get the benefit of those ideas. So just make that change, add in that one ingredient. So for all those weightlifters out there that tend to work out, yeah, I stretch for 30 seconds at the end. I always ask, you ever taken a yoga class? And mix of reactions, as you might imagine, from like no to yeah, it's been a while. I probably should. That's a pretty common one nowadays. But like once a week yoga is fantastic for everybody that like lifts does decent resistance training. Honestly, it's good for everybody in general. But if you're doing resistance training or body pump, that's the resistance training, just in like crazy land. Again, I'm impressed. Is your muscles are contract, right? And then class is over and they're all contracted. Well, it'd be kind of nice if once in a while we said, let go, let go, let go, let go, let go. And with some consistency. And yes, stretching at the end of a class is good. Stretching at the end of any workout is good. Please do it. That's the prime time to stretch. But yoga just takes it to a different level to where it's like a bigger release for your whole body, and it just takes it down. So if you don't have that ingredient in, that would be the one I would really suggest. And yoga classes are all different kinds. There's like chair yoga you can find if I feel like you're gonna wobble and tip over or something like that. But there's a lot of modifications, but just mix it up. Okay. All right, cool. So there's my thing. My new one, body pump. I yeah, touch on that. So second week was definitely not as sore. I mean, we're only on Tuesday and I feel fine. I felt mostly fine like the day after. And I'll also say that my wife likes to go in the sauna afterwards. Well, not the sauna. It's is that sauna? Yeah, the other's a steam room. I kept getting the names mixed up. So I'm like, I don't like steam rooms in group settings. No offense to the rest of you. It's kind of like, incubator of gross. But sauna, dry heat, right? So I was like, okay. So I checked it out. I was like, oh, okay, I'll go in there. And she swears by it. All I can tell you is few minutes in the sauna after a workout. I felt better. I'm sure it's because taking the class the second time, but I wouldn't say taking it the second time was the major thing. So we'll give sauna some credit too. So if you can make time to go sitting there for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, a few minutes afterwards, it just helps move the blood along. And that's this lactic acid basically that we build up when we beat up our muscles in a workout. And it just helps move along. And of course, lots of water. Okay. So there's our thing. Add one new thing that you've been thinking about doing because you probably have and you just haven't done it yet. Make that this week. All right, the noise. Black Friday. Anybody ever heard of Black Friday? Yeah, me too. I actually have some pretty fun memories of Black Fridays. When I was in high school and college, I worked like all kinds of jobs, and a few of them were a good amount of them actually were in like retail, right? So I worked at the Gap. For those of you who've been around DC area for a while, the store's not around anymore, but Britch's Great Outdoors, that was like the cool store back in the 80s, 90s. And so I worked there. And I worked at Abercrombie and Fitch when they actually had clothes, before their, I don't even know what you call it, but when you walk by and basically all the models in the pictures don't have any clothes on. So it's like, what are you really selling? Abercrombie and Fitch actually used to be like a preppy a preppy store. They had things like fly fishing rods and stuff like that way back when. So, but anyway, I worked at those stores, and yes, if you're in that world, that Black Friday and the holiday season, Christmas season is certainly everybody's working, right? But there's a lot of energy, back then to the mall and all that kind of thing. For all you Northern Virginia folks, I was at Fair Oaks Mall, yeah, back in the day when it was actually kind of a cool place. And it still is fine, but you know the difference if you know what I'm talking about. and malls in general. So, anywho, uh, Matthew, my son, was home from college this past week. His birthday was a week and a half ago now. Matthew turned 20. Holy smokes. And so we wanted to go do something fun as a family. And so we're checking out as part of being active. There's a place called Level 99. And we've gone to similar things. A place up in New York I went with Becca and Matthew last year. But it's these places where you go and you get like a little wristband, whatever. But they have all these various rooms that have physical and mental challenge games. So think escape room, but kind of more speed. They're just a few minutes each. In fact, most of them are timed. So it's like this contest where you get points, but it's like an active video game where you have to hit so many lights on the wall as they line up, or you have to crawl through laser beams and not, set off alarms and just all kinds of stuff. Anyway, it's fun. Kids have fun. We have fun. It's fun. So we'd done one around here before, and then so we looked up this one, and this one looks really cool. And it's at of all places, is at Tyson's Corner at the mall. And of course, it was like, oh, level 9, hey, sweet. And so the night before we are looking, and there were like, oh, we should probably make a reservation. Do we want to go? It's going to be so busy. Everybody's home for holidays. It's kind of a fun thing to do. Everybody else is going to have the same idea. So anyway, literally night before, we look up on their online system and it's wide open for making reservations. So we're like, oh, so I guess it's probably not as popular as we think in general. Sweet, good for us. So we'll just head over and not be restricted to, we gotta come on, we gotta leave now, and all that stuff, right? So the next afternoon, head over like mid-afternoon. I have not been to a mall for Black Friday anything in a long time, and for a reason. And yes, you're probably laughing out there going, yeah, you idiot. And so, yes, that's kind of what I was thinking when I pulled up, and all these cars are here. But I know my way around Tyson's pretty good. And yeah, does it take a few minutes to find a parking spot? Sure, but you find one, right? It happens. So we get the parking spot, head into the mall, head over to level 99. There's like a line that looks like a Disney ride a little bit. We're like, oh my goodness. And we're gonna be waiting forever. And so we get in the line, and of course, while we're online, my wife pulls out her phone and is like, yeah, let's make an online reservation like now while we're waiting here. And we look and ended up talking to the guy at the place, and this is probably like 3 in the afternoon, I'd say, maybe 2. And the guy's like, yeah, our next available is at 8 o'clock tonight. So I was like, ah. So Black Friday. That was our experience, even though it was Saturday and the day after. But what does that mean to all of us? Does it make your nervous system kind of go up a little bit? Probably, right? It's like it's not a relaxing day from, I think, a psychological standpoint. Maybe not even from a physical standpoint. And that's kind of really, the official kickoff of now this whirlwind that we call the Christmas season. You know, it's supposed to all be about Jesus being born and Bethlehem and all that. And somehow Santa and Olaf and All the snowmen and everything else is just kind of taken over, and it's not a religious rant. It's just more a matter of how do we get here? Well, I know how we got here, and I think you do too, because it's in the name Black Friday, right? Black is for profits in a business standpoint. And I recommend whew, pump the brakes personally, right? One is have a budget. I don't mean to play parent or anything like that, but the number of people I hear about and hear about statistically that just go into debt basically over a Christmas season, at least for me personally, what are you doing? Because that just, it's supposed to be a joy, right? That is the intention. In fact, when somebody goes into debt, we'll say, and buys way too much and shops way too much, it's I believe that their intention is that they want to bring joy to whomever they're buying these gifts for, and that might even include themselves. And that's fine. I'm very happy to buy gifts for myself when I see something too. But the bill's going to come due, right? And actually, it just popped in my head. That's an awesome metaphor for our health. Everything comes back to health, right? So the bill's going to come due, and then those happy moments aren't going to feel so happy anymore. And what was that thing that we bought? Is it like all these things we bought for the kids, and they're playing with the boxes, more than the stuff, or the unwrapping was cool, and then they don't touch it forever. It's like we're just in a world where it's like too much, right? It's one of the things to talk about all the time is how much noise, so much noise, so much chatter. And the world of health is obviously specifically where I talk about it the most. So much noise, we can't even pick out, like, can you just show me the couple things that are important that'll make the most difference versus staying stuck in our way? So I recommend if you've done that, you've done it before. We're on the front end, don't do it again, shift it up. People love you for who you are, not for what you give them. And if they love you for what you give them, then you might want to rethink that relationship a little bit. And then of course, because I have kids, so I think of that way, of course, is what lesson are we teaching them to basically fall into the same trap? And and again, I like stuff as much as the next person. But value is always the word I like to use for kind of about everything. It's like, all right, you're giving something. So whether you're giving your money, giving your time, giving your attention, giving whatever space in your head you're renting out to somebody or something, that's your cost. So what are you getting in return? What's the joy you're getting? What's the joy that they're receiving? And so on, and just kind of give it a go. So as we head in, and we're in, it's official. As we head into the holiday season, and it seems to be connotated with shopping season, find some good deals if it's stuff you're going to buy anyway. That's what I do. And take advantage of that, but don't go overboard so that you don't feel this sense of overwhelm on the back end, and start by trying not to feel that sense of overwhelm on the front end. And where that's a metaphor for health, as it popped in my brain, as it often does, as words come out of my mouth, my brain's like, oh, I thought of something there. Uh, where that kind of adds in is, what about what we're eating, right? It's like, there's holiday season too. What about what we're eating? Do we overindulge? Okay, once in a while, Thanksgiving, if you did, fine, cool, whatever. But it's like, don't do it every day for a month, right? And don't do it all the time, because that's establishing a new routine. So and then that's going to have a cost, right? See how it works? So what we invest in ourselves, and in the end, financial the least, quite honestly, but what we invest in ourselves, from whether being here or watching this later, that's an investment. My goal is to make that investment more than worth your while of what you get out of this, versus your time. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here doing it, and that's my hope for you. And so just take a moment, try to slow it down. One of my favorite books, Inner Excellence, got pretty popular in the last year or so. One of the quotes in there, It's from like a Stanford professor, so it's not the author, but the author shares a lot of stuff from other people, which I love, because none of us knows everything about everything, right? But one that stuck with me a lot, and for a reason, I'm sure it wouldn't apply to you, is to like ruthlessly fight hurry. Something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, but it was all about just trying to catch ourselves consciously when we feel hurried, feeling a rush, feel we have to now. And that's the time to go pause, unless your house is on fire and get out. That one needed you go. But short of a literal emergency, most emergencies are in our head and our response, what do we do next? That's the part that matters. And so I'm trying to think of an example of it, but be I don't know, somebody cuts you off in traffic. Instinct is I'm mad, right? I don't actually get that way, but it's but say there's something that triggers you. We'll go with that. Doesn't matter what it is, traffic, not traffic. If you have a trigger, well then what is our gut response? Well, our gut response, whatever the detail of the specific is going to be, it's still going to be based in that triggered state, right? A heightened emotional state. And do we think our best in that situation? No, we don't. When emotion's high, logic is low. That was a phrase from Dr. Savinsky he used all the time. I'm sure he stole it from somebody, but I appreciate it and I pass it on to you. So when emotion is high, logic is low, right? So so we want to take a moment to ruthlessly fight against hurry. If you're around me for any period of time, you see me do that once in a while. And it's kind of a thing I picked up years ago. I do it in the office like all the time. If things are hopping and moving and all that stuff. I'm pretty used to it now, so it's just kind of normal, and so I don't whatever. But years ago, when it was like a newish thing. It was great, flattered, want to help people. That's the point. If I felt myself like my brain, okay, you're going too fast now, I just do that. Literally once, maybe twice if you needed to. Depends on how fired up we are. And it was good energy, by the way. It wasn't even bad energy. But it was like slow it down just a hair. Now proceed, right? Because we can in fact I suggest that we actually move faster and we're more productive and we make more progress when we take that pause and then reinsert ourselves, and can be as long of a pause as what I just did, a breath, right? It could also be a day, a week, a month, a year, if a big one. But if something feels rushed and pressured, then lean into that and really give it some thought to try to figure out why. Because that means there's a fear in our head. It could be a very valid fear, or it could just be breaking into a new comfort zone, right? So that feeling doesn't mean bad and it doesn't mean good. What it means is it's like a warning light going, I'm not so sure. But again, the why behind we're not so sure, that varies and it depends on, everything, under the sun. Um, so take a moment, fight the hurry. I like the word fight, and they don't use that, but don't hurry. How about that? But it starts with a present time consciousness enough to be able to kind of check in and see, feel, really feel, because it's usually a physical manifestation where we feel something. Chest gets a little tighter. Uh, Whatever, you feel your heart going up, if you take a moment, you probably already know the answer for you because it's different for all of us. That's why I can't tell you this is what it is. Look for it. No, you have to look for it in you because your version is going to be different than mine and so on. Mine will be that I'll get like a little something here, and sometimes I'll clear my throat, and it's not congestion, but it's kind of just that little bit of a thing. But I've gotten so much practice, over 30 years in the office, that that plateau, right? So talking about like just moving through comfort zones, and it's a good thing. It's yeah, the what I can do now, you would hope, is a lot smoother than what I could do a few years ago. It's always a matter of progress and building. No different than that body pump class that you guys have been doing forever or whatever that thing is you do. But but switch it up a little bit and see what's out there. Okay. So Black Friday, holidays, all these commitments, I need to do this, need to do that. I'll just share that no, you don't. Okay. You don't do what you want, have fun, but make sure it's fun and make sure, and I know you know in your heart of hearts that the people around you, they really love you, and I'm sure they do. They just love you. Okay. And keep it simple. And in fact, one of the things I've switched to with my kids now that they've gotten older is a little bit is I like experiences. Not that we don't get presents and stuff too, but I shifted a little while ago to where I don't need anything. I don't need anything. And if maybe a couple things I need, like a new something, right, that just worn out and that's fine. And if we want to wrap it up and put it under a tree and go through the motions, that's fun. I like it. That's good. But the reality is like a lot of us don't need stuff, right? So it really is bonus stuff, and therefore it is really a gift. But making memories is kind of that's what is it? That gift, we all probably have a gift or two when we were kids that we got that we can still remember. But how many of them can you remember? Right? It's like I don't remember very many of them at all. And you're probably the same. And you know what? The people around us are the same too. And what about, hey, let's all go do blank? And it could just be whatever. I'm near DC. Maybe it's you go down to DC where like the national Christmas tree is going to be and you go do something together. It's like I can remember going down to the tree more than I can gifts or take a pick. It doesn't matter what it is in your world, but it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't mean, going to going to Hawaii or something like that. It doesn't have to be free other than your gas money, like just going down to DC. It's whatever it is. Think of it in those terms. And I think you know that. I'm not telling you what you don't know, but just like me, sometimes just being reminded a few times is what's necessary to help things to sink in a little bit better. All right. So make some memories. There's the moral of the story. All right. Now the opposite, or the result if we don't fight that hurry, is headaches. All right, headaches. So headaches come in all kinds, right? You got the biggies like migraines, brain tumors. Headaches are a symptom of that. Don't you worry if you have a headache, because odds are really small that you have a brain tumor. Although plenty of patients come in periodically. I read online, right? And the reality is, I'm totally cool with anybody reading anything online because I actually appreciate the proactive approach to health in general. But as I've said a million times, the thing that online lacks is context. And context is what your doctors are supposed to have based on their education and then experience on top of that. So I can tell you, look you straight in the eye, and let you know that if you have a headache, the odds are really small, like really small, that it's an actual brain tumor. But is it possible? It is. And you know what? That's on me to be able to determine if, oh, something's weird here on somebody. So we're going to go away from the morbid, but I want to give you the full scope, just down to like, my head hurts a little bit, right? They all stink. Uh, I'll share with you one big thing is that there is no normal headache. There's no normal amount of headaches. There might be common when you chatter with your friends and family that everybody seems to get them. But I'm letting you know that that just means all y'all have something wrong. I rarely ever get a headache. And if I do, there's usually a pretty specific reason why. It might be in hindsight, but learn the lesson and then try to do better, right? Going forward. So stuff happens. But one of the big ones right now, nowadays, is actually hydration. Hydration, it plays a big factor in the most common like tension headaches. And I'll spin a little bit. So the muscles from the back of your head down to your shoulders, your traps there, those are your big main neck muscles, obviously on the backside. And when those muscles get tight, they literally squeeze the space between your head and your shoulders. You know, you're wearing your shoulders as earrings up there, and we want to bring them down. And and if you don't already, and you go to a gym, that's what pull downs are for. They actually strengthen the muscle, your latissimus dorsi, but they strengthen the muscle that literally offsets your traps to help bring them down. And if you aren't doing them, then you sit at a computer all day. Trust me, you need to do them. And if you don't sit at a computer all day, trust me, you pretty much need to do them too. Otherwise, this is going to be a default. So those muscles get tight. So muscles are like sponges. Picture it that way, right? And muscles are really bundles of tubes of blood. And the blood flows through and it brings in nutrients and they move, right? So picture like a sponge filled with water and it's plump and flexible and all that. That's what a healthy muscle is supposed to be like. And when you get dehydrated, and it's a scale, but picture a sponge drying out, right? So as the sponge dries, what happens to it? It becomes steadily a bit more rigid and it shrinks up. So, and that's the same thing that happens to your muscles. So when it comes to the muscles in that particular location, that's the place they seem to have the biggest impact first, even though hydration is certainly a whole body thing. And so they tighten, 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 and they just yank like a weight on the back of your head. And all of a sudden, the base of your skull is stuck against the top of your neck. And ta-da, you get a headache. Shocking, right? I put it that way, but that's literally what happens with the most common headaches is that the neck muscles get tight, whether it be from posture, et cetera, like lots of different reasons. But in the end, that's the most common headaches are those. And they can crawl towards the front, like to your temple bone and even to your forehead. We hear a lot this week about like, oh, it might be my sinuses. I'm not disputing that. It probably is your sinuses, but it's your sinuses because most of the time your forehead bone is literally in the wrong place. And yes, with Activator, we can check it accurately and adjust it if needed. And a lot of you have that. A lot of times it's the muscles in the front of the neck that run down to your collarbones, and your collarbones are hiked up and stuck. So this is stuck, and that attaches up right here under it's your jaw and your ears, and then it pulls, and then you got all this, and that actually has a direct effect on sinuses too. So just know that where you feel it and how you feel it is an end result most of the time, as opposed to, all right, let's talk about that one. So it's like, oh, it's my sinuses. Okay, and what are you gonna do about your sinuses? It's like, well, sinuses is just an anatomical region. They're air pockets, in our skull bones in our face. And the reason that you get a headache or you get sinus pressure is in those little air pockets. There's like a pinhole where air is supposed to be able to flow in and out. Well, if we're congested and things like that, then it's mucusy, and then things get stuck in there. So that little pinhole gets clogged, for lack of a better way to put it, but kind of truthfully. And then so now things aren't flowing, and therefore you have pressure, right? So there's a sinus headache right there, but so, okay, well, what created the congestion? Right. So it's taking it that step back and back and back to actual cause, because that's the only way, one, to find a way out from where you're at. But two, the only way you really have a shot of not repeating the same patterns, at least as much as possible going into the future. So hydration, it's not hot out. If you're like me, the heat turns on, I mean, in our house, and it's like living in a mini oven. It's not that it feels uncomfortable in the moment, but heat is heat. Heat pulls the moisture out of the air, and so it's like bakes us. So it's weird, but in the winter, you actually need just as much water as when you're sweating all summer. In fact, I'd suggest maybe a little more, because then it's combined with, well, what are you having instead? You're drinking something. And so does that mean more coffee, more tea, more things like that? And, it doesn't mean there aren't some health qualities to some tea. So I'm not saying they're unhealthy, but all of those things are on some level dehydrating. And so so we say we drink more coffee, then that actually means we need even more water to offset the effect of the coffee. So see how that cycles? So just be very purposeful about water. If you make that your one thing, I can promise you that your frequency or potential for headaches will decrease just by doing that. Okay. I'm not going to go down the migraine route today. Oh, why not? Change my mind. So migraines, they're a different animal. Most other headaches, sinus, tension, temple, back of the head, top of the head, all these sorts of things. They kind of, most of them have this similar underpinnings, just details are slightly different. And generally all very fixable, go get adjusted right away, is make your life better a lot faster. But migraines are a different breed. And migraines, if you haven't had one, good for you. I have not. I'm very happy about that. I plan on continuing that streak for a lifetime. But one, they're severe headaches, but they're very neurological as far as what it messes with people, messes with their eyesight. I mean, it can be piercing pain in their temples usually. But light, sound, all that stuff, nausea usually goes with it too. And that's why people get migraines, unfortunately. They usually go huddle and curl up in a ball in a dark room and just ride it out. And it's just a terrible situation to have to deal with. And we've treated tons of people for migraines over the years. Amazing success rate. In fact, practically everybody. I cannot recall honestly somebody not drastically improving. People who get them once in a while, more times than not, they're practically fixed, or they go from once every couple weeks to didn't have one this year. And then the folks, and they're out there. I've had some that have had migraines daily for like a decade. I can't even imagine like their level of fortitude to function that way and push through, but power to them, and power to them that they kept looking for solutions, that they showed up in my office with that. And most of the time we get rid of them in kind of the same fashion. And at the least, there's one lady always stands out in my mind, which really gave me a lot of perspective on other people's pain, and especially chronic pain, because that's what migraines consistently are. It's a version of chronic pain, right? And she came in, she was one of these people where it's like 5 to 7 migraines a week. And well, there's no mild migraine. 5 to 7 a week for like decade plus, right? And so she comes in, she had all the classic stuff. And what makes a migraine happen is that it's all about the neurological setup, the combination of you got this wrong, this wrong, or this wrong. Uh, a lot of stuff, I like cooking. It's almost like what ingredients are in the recipe. So the recipe for a migraine is your jaw has to be misaligned. Doesn't mean that you have any clue that your jaw specifically is misaligned, like your bite is seems fine and all that sort of stuff. Or maybe you do notice that it's not right. Either one, it doesn't matter. We can check and see if your jaw is out of place. An activator is like the only thing I know that does it accurately and really well. And then C2, which is the second vertebra from the top of the neck. The C2 is like almost a given if somebody has a headache, 90+% of the time. C2, which is bigger than the other bones at the top of the neck, so it has more muscles attached to it. Bones are really just all the little points that stick out of them and everything. They're just places for muscles to hook on and then make us move around and do stuff. So C2 is fairly large relative to its neighbors. So it has more muscles attached, which means if the muscles pull, who's getting pulled the most and the hardest and all that, and that's C2. And C2 is kind of the one that'll set off headaches. You throw the jaw into the game, and that's the difference where the crazy stuff happens with the vision and the nausea and all that kind of thing. But no different. We just put all that stuff back where it's supposed to be, and lack of a better analogy, but it's like unloading a gun. And that's how I describe it to folks. Is if you have your jaw and C2 out of place at the same time, it's like walking around with a loaded gun for a migraine all the time. As you hear about people with that have migraines, where you have a trigger, right? So they get triggered. Could be a smell, could be a weather change, could be food, could be all whatever. Something that's real, and it's a very, weather changes, pressure changes, it's real, smells are real, etc. All these things are real things, but we're all experiencing those things, right? So we all experience like weather coming and going and stuff like that. So why does somebody get a migraine and other people don't, and most people don't? Well, it's not about the weather, it's about the person. And in a way, that's good because I know I can't control the weather. I don't expect to be able to do that. So that'd be like, well, that stinks. Can't do anything about that. But what can we do about you? And that's the whole different story. So by getting even one of those two things in place, most common when somebody's improving is the jaw usually holds faster. So it's the one that starts to stabilize sooner, to where it's pretty common to where somebody might say, "Hey, I got a headache," but it didn't turn into a migraine. And you've never seen people so excited to just get a headache. To the most of us, we're like, "Why are you so happy about getting a headache?" And it's like, well, it's all relative, isn't it? And so it kind of calms down. And so we just got to get things where they're supposed to be, jaw and upper neck in particular. So if you or anybody you know suffers from migraines, then definitely send them in. If you don't live near where my practice is at, look up on activator.com or contact my office and we'll show you where to look for doctors that are certified in knowing how to do what we do, so that they should be able to get similar results, with whomever is clearly looking and needing and wanting to have those results. All right. So headaches, tons of influence over it all, but start with hydration. Lat pull downs when you're at the gym, just a couple times a week, nothing crazy, really good posture when you do them. You're just strengthening the muscles that literally pull your shoulders back down. And and there we are. All right. So migraines. All right. And last but not least, yes. That's why we're here early today, this week. Acapulco, heading back to Acapulco tomorrow. Um, Acapulco's kind of an interesting thing. I've been going down there to it's basically a mentor of mine that went down to, he used to vacation when he was in college with a buddy of his whose father, follow the dots, whose dad was like a bigwig in Hollywood. And so they owned a vacation down there when Acapulco was in its heyday, right? Man, it used to be all the Hollywood celebrities, especially, like all had houses down there. That was like their little playground. And that's cool. And it is cool. And then cartels took over. And so, unfortunately and sadly, obviously, because the majority of people are good people, that's why you don't really hear about Acapulco. Everybody's heard the name. For a reason, the Love Boat used to stop there, right there in Puerto Vallarta, back in the day. And it's tropical paradise, but it's not a common place to go. Well, Clint, my mentor, when he doesn't have children, him and his wife were at a conference in Houston back in COVID time. So we all remember the 15 days to flatten the curve. Yeah, that was wishful thinking, wasn't it? But it's our reality of that moment. And so they were there and they live in New York City. And they were in Houston. And he turned to his wife and he said, how about we go to Acapulco instead of back to New York to ride out this 15 days and just take a little vacation, right? They've been there a bunch of times, so they knew where they were going, is that kind of thing. So so they went down, and 2.5 months later, still there, I ended up buying the house of the, if everybody's heard of Sara Lee. I don't recommend eating it, but Sara Lee, the frozen desserts that started it all. If you're a fan of the movie Catch Me If You Can, they're all like, oh, Sara Lee and all this stuff. So it's been around for decades. But he bought the guy's 9 bedroom villa in Acapulco overlooking the bay. And yes, it's unbelievably gorgeous and so on. Super exclusive neighborhood. Warner Brothers owns the house just above the hill. The guy next door is actually Carlos Slim. Interesting name. You think gangster, at least I do, but he's actually a tech mogul in Mexico. He's been the richest man in the world like 10 years ago. So the richest guy in Mexico owns the house next door, et cetera, et cetera. And these neighborhoods, one neighborhood, and all of it is super exclusive, gated, the whole bit. And that's the only reason I go, because often land in the airport, drive into the gates of the neighborhood, and I may not leave those gates again for 7 days until I'm heading back to the airport. Have I been down in town little bits and everything? Sure. But yeah, it is. So I'm heading back. Why do I head back? I Over the years I've been there a bunch. It just is this thing. This is the reason I'm sharing it actually, because I want you to try to find kind of a similar place, and you don't have to fly across the world. But it's a place that removed me from my day-to-day normal, right? And I think that's a very, very key ingredient for us to kind of take a step back and take a breath to evaluate our life, and when it comes down to it. And it can be a little nugget of it or the whole darn thing. But nonetheless, if we're in it all the time, we can't see the forest for the trees. So just changing our reality and just kind of taking a moment to breathe is a really big thing. And then when I go down there, I can't really do a lot. Like I can't even log into half of my business things due to security reasons of not crossing borders. So I can work on what I bring. And I do work there. That's actually really the reason I go down and I do work. But the environment that I'm working in, it covers a few different things. So for me, nature, air, staring at the ocean is like this big, vast openness. Those are things that really charge me up, but in a calm way. But they really get my juices going. It's like a good energy. The other part is removing from just that day to day. So what's that thing? And it could be just getting a cabin in the woods out in the Shenandoah, right? So it doesn't have to be as far-fetched as this, but removing, usually slowing it down, right? Back to the hurry thing. And then the other one in this case, because it is work, I'm not the only one there. It's small groups of like-minded people, right? So they're all people that are creative. They want to do better. Some of them are in healthcare. So what's doing better in healthcare? Doing better is helping you all even more, which is what's the point of doing any of this if we can't help, right? We just want to help and make people's lives better as a group. And so you get in these little circles and you create the right environment. And I get so much alone time there too, because I can't do a lot for people back here in a real way. And so it's just kind of a decompress and it opens up the mind and it's really amazing. So I recommend trying to find your Acapulco. In fact, I was on ChatGPT yesterday going, all right, Acapulco's fine. It's like, is there any place in the US? I mean, is there any place within a few hours of DC that I could just drive to and get a similar thing and playing with it a little bit? Funny enough, Annapolis came up. Annapolis is one of my favorite places to go. I haven't been in sailing in a while, but I love to sail. And so it's kind of funny when it pulled that one up from like an energy standpoint that goes with that. So find your Acapulco, search for Acapulco. At the very least, just it can be taking a walk, favorite bench at the park, right? Live near Burke Lake Park. It's a nice big loop. You can find your own spot out there and just chill out. Make that your Acapulco, right? But take a moment just to kind of settle down and just be with you and think about nothing. And when you think about nothing, the things that matter will usually kind of come up gently. That's your little sign, right? So try to create a vacuum, create a space, and that way honestly, the big things come up in a good way. All right, that was it. That's my sermon for today. So you all have an amazing week. Now, next week, because of Acapulco, I'll be in like Mexico City's airport at this time next week. So we're going to be doing the live webinar at noon on Wednesday. All right, so Wednesday, I'm looking at my calendar, Wednesday the 10th. It's going to be noon. Just that one week, it'll be on Wednesday instead. So I will see you next week. Have an awesome week. And I'll hopefully be a little more tan when I see you then. All right. Bye now.